Godzilla in 1998, easily the most hated and controversial Godzilla movie of the entire franchise. In fact, many people won't even consider the Godzilla in the movie to be a Godzilla and like to consider him as Zilla. Even Toho called him Zilla because he said he, quote, took the god out of Godzilla. But anyways, when the film released, it didn't do so well. Critics called it a lame Jurassic Park ripoff, Godzilla fans hated it for its interpretation of the kaiju, and general audiences just thought it was a bad movie. All of these factors contributed to the movie flopping. The movie made $379 million worldwide, with a production budget of $130 to $150 million and marketing costs around $80 mil. The movie actually made a profit, but TriStar considered it a financial disappointment. All of these factors, the poor critical reception and the disappointment at the box office, caused TriStar to scrap all cinematic sequels to the film. But this begs the question, if there was going to be a sequel, what was it going to be like, and what actually ended up coming from it? Before we answer that, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Now, this title is actually a bit of a lie, because it wasn't a failed sequel, it was failed sequels. TriStar originally wanted to make a trilogy of Godzilla films. Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin were set to return to direct and produce the sequels. Despite being canned, the movie actually went along somewhat in pre-production. So far into pre-production, in fact, we got quite a hefty script for it. The script for the sequel was written by Tab Murphy, the man who wrote Tarzan and Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which actually are pretty good movies. The rough outline for the plot was this. The movie was going to be more of a Godzilla-inspired movie and have more classic Showa-era vibes, where it's goofy but enjoyable. But because of the previous movie's failings, they scrapped it because Sony and TriStar didn't think it would be profitable. Now, without further ado, this is the story of Godzilla 2. Manhattan is destroyed. Godzilla is dead. The military continues their search for any trace of Godzilla's eggs or children. Nick Tapoulis is invited to a warehouse containing Godzilla's dissected body parts. Scientists from around the globe have come to inspect the creature. Nick, however, feels incredibly overwrought for the role he had to play in the death of an incredibly unique animal. Due to these feelings, he leaves the warehouse. He then turns down an opportunity to lead the research project. His guilt consumes him and thus sneaks past the police in order to enter the Manhattan Underground. He hopes to find any last remnant of the Godzilla species in his search. His search bore fruit when he found the final baby Zilla. The creature was trapped in rubble and nearly starved to death. Nick was able to free it whilst avoiding the creature's bites and scratches. Nick leaves the subway tunnel and finds a local fish market and buys every last piece in order to feed the baby. Inside the tunnel, Nick feeds the baby and the two begin to bond. Suddenly, voices echo in the tunnel. The beam of dozens of flashlights can be seen. The soldiers are approaching. Nick knows if the baby is seen, it'll be immediately shot and killed. Therefore, he uses the last of his fish to lure the baby Zilla away. They are able to reach the surface undetected. Throughout this whole process, the baby Zilla has imprinted onto Nick, which means the baby thinks Nick is his mother. More soldiers get closer and closer, so he hides the baby in a big coat and brings it to the water's edge. A homeless man comes and begs the bear for money. When he puts his hand out, the baby Zilla snaps at him. The man's screams get the attention of the soldiers. Nick, knowing they're about to be discovered, tries to get the baby Zilla into the water. However, the baby refuses to leave its mother. Thus, Nick, in a desperate attempt to save the creature's life, pushes it away, yells at it, and even throws rocks at it. The baby, heartbroken at its mother's betrayal, retreats into the water and swims away. 2 years later. Strange events have been occurring throughout the world. A cruise ship is found near Australia, completely empty. A village on Fiji has had its people vanished and village decimated. A jump jet from Indonesia has been sliced in half at 8,000 feet. In the crash site, no bodies are found. In response to these abnormalities, a global task force has been formed to investigate and is being headed by Anthony Hicks. A giant egg was discovered in New England. When Hicks hears of it, he sends a force to research it. The team reaches the town where the egg is located, but it's a ghost town. The people have vanished without a trace, and in the center of the town, pieces of the hatched egg are discovered. The crew concludes that Godzilla must be in some way implicated with all these phenomena. So Hick immediately looks for the best Godzilla expert he knows, Nick. In Vermont, wedding bells ring outside a small church. Nick and Audrey have gotten married. Despite the lively wedding, Nick is very unenthusiastic about getting married. Outside the church, a limo is waiting for them. Nick enters the car, but just as Audrey is about to enter too, while she's waving enthusiastically at the crowd, The limo doors shut rapidly and the doors are locked, trapping Nick inside. The limo then flees from the scene, leaving the crowd and Audrey astonished. By the way, that was the last time we see Audrey in the film. Nick demands an explanation from the driver, where we learn it's actually Philippe Roach. He apologizes for the abrasive entrance and gives Nick a classified folder with the details of the strange phenomena occurring throughout the globe. He reveals to Nick that he's working for Hicks and the Global Task Force, who are sure Godzilla must be responsible. Nick, however, firmly believes that even if Godzilla had survived Manhattan, there was no possible way it could be responsible. There's simply too many oddities. Philip, on the other hand, just wants to put an end to all this phenomena. If Godzilla is still alive, it, quote, must be destroyed once and for all. After Philip reveals how much he needs Nick's help, Nick agrees and the two commence their search. Nick and Philippe begin their search on the southern hemisphere. They decide that the only place on the globe where a creature like Godzilla could go undetected would be Australia, so that's where they start their search. In the Australian outback, the two meet a biologist named Anna Charlton, who's supposedly researching dignos. Anna doesn't exactly like the two, and Nick and Philippe are suspicious of her, so when they say their goodbyes, Philippe slips a tracking module onto Anna's car, convinced she knows more than she's letting on. The duo trail Anna's car for a while until they lose it due to their vehicle breaking down. The pair is left stranded when they hear. They grab their gear and sprint up uphill when they suddenly encounter Godzilla, fully grown. However, Godzilla is not alone. Godzilla has given birth to many Teenzillas who are nearly 30 feet tall. As the Godzillas approach the duo, a group of Dignos attack one of the Godzillas called the Runt. The Runt is frailer and weaker than the rest of its family and begs for help, and the Dignos storm it. Godzilla defends its child, and Nick and Philippe find themselves from a Godzilla stampede. Just as they're about to be crushed, Anna appears, calling for them to get inside her car. Anna is able to escape from the Teenzillas after a chase, as Godzilla returns, carrying the Runt on its tail. Philippe tries to use Anna's radio to contact Hicks. Nick, however, doesn't want Hicks to know. They argue about it, and a shot suddenly echoes. The radio is destroyed. Nick and Philippe turn to see Anna point a gun at them. Anna reveals she found Godzilla a year ago, and has devoted herself to learning about and protecting these creatures. Nick, however, tries to earn Anna's trust by saying how he is trying to prove Godzilla is not responsible for the phenomena. However, Anna does not believe him. She knows Nick was responsible for the first Godzilla's death. Nick, with no other option, reveals to Philippe and Anna about the incident with the baby Godzilla 2 years ago, and how that Godzilla now has started a family. Philippe, left speechless, is determined to alert Hicks. Thus, in order to persuade Philippe and Anna, Nick heads over to the car, grabs the wheel, and books it towards the 50-foot Godzilla. Godzilla roars, and Nick stops just short of it. Nick approaches Godzilla, and Godzilla roars at him, destroying all the car's windows. Nick exits the vehicle and stands before the monster. Godzilla raises its foot in order to squish Nick. When it realizes something about the human is familiar, Godzilla recognizes its mother and nuzzles Nick with love. Philippe and Anna watch, stunned, as Godzilla gives a welcome roar that knocks Nick to his feet. In Sydney, a gigantic egg larva has been discovered near the city's outskirts. Thus, Hick moves the Defense Force in retaliation to patrol it. The Defense Force has also become worried as to why they have not received word from Nick or Philippe. Back in the outback, Godzilla follows Nick everywhere, and wherever Godzilla goes, its children aren't far behind. This leads to comedic situations, especially when Godzilla insists on sleeping next to Nick. Anna, not trusting Godzilla, shares some of her research with Nick. She shares the fact that an adult Godzilla can only reproduce once, and the number of offspring is determined by the land's carrying capacity. Nick, however, is struggling with the fact that he has feelings for Anna. I mean, he's married, but whenever he tries to contact his wife, it always ends up in screaming and her hanging up. Around this time, Nick keeps trying to convey to Philippe that Godzilla is not a harmful creature, but only attacks when its kin is threatened. The group is amazed at the love Godzilla shows, especially the Runt. They believe Godzilla represents the next stage of evolution brought on by nuclear testing. Philippe is actually opening up about Godzilla. However, one night, Godzilla leaves. The group follows Godzilla in the car for around 20 miles until it reaches the north coast. There, Godzilla slips into the ocean. The crew wonders, is Godzilla actually causing the events worldwide and feeding humans to its young? However, flashes of light light up the ocean, and schools of fish float up to the ocean's surface. Godzilla then leaps out of the water, bringing thousands of fish onto the beach. The crew watches as Godzilla accumulates more and more fish onto the beach. When day breaks, the Godzilla brood approaches from a far distance and descends onto the beach. The Godzillas begin feasting on the fish, and the crew now has conclusive evidence that Godzilla is not the culprit of these strange incidents. Philippe even admits he was wrong. But if Godzilla didn't do it, who did? In order to find out, the trio go on an expedition to Monster Island, the birthplace of Godzilla. On Monster Island, the UN has taken complete authority over it and has so far found no biological anomalies. The island is completely off limit to visitors, so the trio tried to slip by wearing scuba gear and wetsuits. On their swim to the island, they're covered by a giant shadow of a blue whale 3 times normal size. The trio arrive to the island and they witness even more strange events. They see many new species, mutated beyond recognition. They don't find anything that could be the culprit of the events until the sky above them darkens. A buzzing sound fills the air, and huge swarms of mutated winged insects appear, equipped with vicious mandibites and deadly wasp-like stingers. The creatures are big as a car and are carrying something in their 6 spiny legs. The trio watches as the insects land and release humans from their captivity. One man tries to run, but he's immediately stung to death. All the while, a swarm of wingless, termite-like insects burrow from a nest in the ground and herd the human captives further underground. Suddenly, a horrific scream hurtles out from the grown nest. One by one, the insects die until the piercing silence is all that remains. In an instant, the queen bitch appears from an opening. Yes, that is her name. I'm being 100% serious. That's actually what she's called. She's a gigantic, ferocious, winged insectoid, with insects that flock all around her, obeying her wills. The queen takes flight and disappears out over the ocean as the group watches. The crew then realizes that the disappearance of the people from around the world stemmed from the queen. She is kidnapping the humans and feeding them through her hive. Nick and Anna deduct that Godzilla is the predator of these bugs, and because of man's destruction, the insects no longer have a natural predator. If the bugs continue to feast, they'll multiply and conquer the world. The crew must find a way to bring Godzilla and its brood to Monster Island in order to re-establish the natural order. Philippe then becomes very worried. He wants to return to the outback immediately. Anna and Nick are confused because Godzilla is safe in the outback. But then, Philippe tells them the truth. Philippe reveals to Hicks and the Global Task Force of Godzilla's location. Nick and Anna are shocked as to why Philippe would do such a thing. Philippe reveals he was frightened by the number of Godzillas and because he had nightmares of Godzilla's taking over the world. Nick feels betrayed, and the two begin fighting before Anna breaks it up. She tells them to discuss it later because time is running out for Godzilla and the world. When they return, they're too late though. Godzillas lie dead everywhere, and the outback lies in ruin from the explosions and combat. The task force and Hicks are closing in on their last targets, Godzilla and the Runt. Nick, Anna, and Philippe arrive. Nick puts himself between Godzilla and the forces, resulting in Hicks calling a ceasefire. Nick looks around at the bloodshed that has occurred, and with teary eyes tells Godzilla, "I'm sorry." Godzilla's eyes are full of heartbreak and betrayal as it burrows underground at the Runt, escaping. Nick is left alone in the chaos, feeling horrible. Philippe is congratulated by Hicks, but Philippe warns that the general might have just doomed the world. Before Hicks can respond, he is interrupted by a message from Sydney. Something is happening to the giant egg larva. Near downtown Sydney, a greenhouse-like enclosure has been built around the egg larva. Scientists use the enclosure to study the egg. Tanks and missile launchers surround the enclosure in order to attack whatever hatches, if need be. The surrounding downtown area has been evacuated. Nick realizes that the egg was laid by the Queen, the first domino that will lead to the destruction of the world. Nick pleads with Hick to destroy the egg. As the two argue, the Queen makes a sudden entrance, with the intent of protecting her egg. She destroys Hick's forces, while Nick, Anna, and Philippe take cover. Then something burrows from out of the pavement. Godzilla, and hang onto its tail, the Runt. Godzilla rushes the Queen in a battle that covers the entirety of downtown Sydney. In the battle, Godzilla takes a sting right in the throat from the Queen that paralyzes it. The Runt tries to help, but is immediately seen by the Queen, who starts to attack it. Anna then just as quickly races to help the Runt, but then the Queen kills the baby and grabs Anna, much to Nick's horror. Godzilla reawakens when it sees its dead baby and roars in agony before heading towards the Queen's egg larva and setting it ablaze with his atomic breath. The Queen screams in anger and takes flight, with Anna in her grasp. Nick, Philippe, and Hicks all see Godzilla dive into the ocean as they head for Monster Island for a final showdown with the Queen. Nick and Philippe set aside their differences in order to save Anna. Hicks sends forth a military rescue, led by a squadron of jet fighters. He boards an at-shaped chopper with Nick and Philippe. As the helicopters ascend, Hick remembers to pass a note to Nick. Nick reads it and is shocked. Philippe asks if it's bad news, and Nick responds saying, "I'm not sure." Nick hands the note to Philippe, and the note says Nick's marriage has been annulled. As they approach Monster Island, however, they are attacked by the giant insects. A battle ensues with the jet fighters and the bugs. However, the insects' numbers prove to be too much for the jet fighters, and it ends up with every chopper crashing down the island as Godzilla wades ashore to take up the attack. Nick, Philippe, and Hicks leave the rubble of the crash site as absolute carnage ensues around them. Godzilla is being attacked by the flying insectoids from above, and below, the termite-like bugs go at him. He fires his atomic breath to incinerate everything around him. Hick requests for backup, and Nick and Philippe enter the maze of the island's underground passageways to find Anna. The duo find a gigantic underground chamber where hundreds of half-starved human prisoners are being guarded by some wingless insects. Using incinerator grenades, Nick and Philippe kill the bugs and free Anna. Anna and Nick then embrace in an emotional reunion. The trio try to leave the underground passageway with the captives when the Queen suddenly appears, blocking their path and trapping them inside the chamber. The Queen advances towards them and is to eat Nick when Godzilla bursts from the cave walls. Godzilla and the Queen battle in one giant brawl. The trio and the prisoners find another route as the battle slowly moves topside. In this encounter, Godzilla wins as he kills the Queen once and for all, restoring the natural order back to the world and Monster Island. Hicks' reinforcements arrive, and they line up their weapons to finally kill Godzilla. Godzilla is defenseless, tired, and drained from his battle with the Queen. Nick and Hank are so angry at this that Hick orders them to be put under protective custody. Just as everything seems to be going wrong, Hick, who thinks he's doing what's best for the world, is about to give the order to kill Godzilla when something amazing happens. The hundreds of people who were set free form a circle around Godzilla. The person leading the crowd is none other than Philippe. Suddenly, Hick realizes that killing Godzilla would be the wrong thing to do. He orders his forces to stand down. Cheers erupt from the people that Godzilla freed. Then, a new sound fills the air. Another Godzilla emerges from the shores of Monster Island, crying out for its mother. It's the Runt, who wasn't killed after all. Godzilla seeing his baby regains energy and the two share a heartfelt reunion. Finally, with the backdrop of the beautiful Monster Island sunset, Nick, Anna, and Philippe say goodbye to Godzilla and the Runt as the pair makes their way back into the ocean. Overall, this movie sounds like it would be great, you know? Just from a rough outline of the plot, you're connected to these people. The Runt was a bit of a useless character, like, why single him out, you know? There's no point to it. But I'm sure he probably made sense later on. It's probably being set up for the third movie. Queen Bitch is a stupid name, but I like it, you know? It shows how the movie really isn't taking itself seriously like the other film was. Which is what I find to be the main problem with animated films. They think they're cooler than they are. They think they're like serious, deep, and cool movies when they're all like pretty goofy and silly. Moonfall, anyone? Which is probably why this movie was going to be made. They probably shouldn't have Roland Emmerich back for it. I like how it's much more of a Godzilla film, you know? You have Monster Island, the atomic breath more prominent, Godzilla fighting another monster, Godzilla having children, and Godzilla being a metaphor / protector of the natural order, which none of the monsters would actually use later on. Also, Godzilla is much more of a prominent character. He actually is proactive, doing a lot more stuff, like battling. Godzilla is just much better in the script. The central connection between Nick and Godzilla is actually quite wholesome, and would have been probably pretty lovely to see made. Just Godzilla and Nick bonding, that would have been a nice little scene to see. I don't really like the 1988 film. I think it's a bit overhated. But if this film came out and it lived up to its potential, it would probably redeem the original film just because it gives us this one. All in all, this movie has a lot of potential. It probably could have been really fun and entertaining, and even a good Godzilla movie. But if it ever does get made, don't have Roland Emmerich direct it. Ultimately, this movie was never made, obviously. But that doesn't mean 1998 didn't get a sequel. In 1998, an animated series was made, which is a direct continuation of the movie. It follows Godzilla, the one who survives at the end of the 1998 movie, as he battles against dozens of monsters. It actually shares some similarities with the scrapped movie, like how in the show, Godzilla also imprints onto Nick. This series serves as the only official Godzilla 2, so that's cool. And I've actually heard that the show isn't half bad, so, you know, if you're interested, give it a watch. In conclusion, Godzilla 1998 was a bad and disappointing movie. However, several sequels for the movie were planned, but due to the poor critical reception of the film, the sequels were canned. But an animated series did air from 1998 to 2000, which is the only official sequel to Godzilla 1998. Now, Godzilla 2 only serves as a what if. What if it came out? What if it was good? That is the legacy of Godzilla 2. The unmade sequel to the 1998 Godzilla movie. Thanks for watching, let me know your thoughts in the comments below.